was extremely surprised. Common sense was that you expect people to sit at home and consume more. Actually, it was not the case at all. What we saw is actually a drop between 5 even to 10%, depends on the regions, that player actually deposit less. We saw more use of responsible gaming tools. That was very encouraging to see it. So we knew that, hey, we see that the database itself, it seems like it's acting in a healthy way. And at the same time, we saw more traffic coming in from other, I would say, sources or in the current sources, but just in the higher volume.
The bigger movement, that will be the land-based, the large land-based operators have been very, very dependent on their bricks and mortar business. In those boardrooms now, there has to be discussions about mergers and acquisitions to kind of mitigate that risk going forward. Perhaps not for the second wave per se, but for the next time we have a pandemic like this.
What we also did, and that may be a surprise for everyone, during the months of lockdown, we invested heavily in our shop operations and the shop technology. So we brought out a completely new set of self-service betting terminals. We have a new open cashier solution. So not as only now more easier for a customer to play within the betting shops, it also helps nowadays to secure social distancing.
And this shifts the power balance. And suddenly, as an operator, you might have like 30-40% of your revenue from the same supplier. And this will open up for small guys like me and Ben running Green Jade, because as an operator, you need to kind of risk diversify. You can't have all your eggs in one basket.
I think a lot of players now, they know that affiliates, they're not stupid. They know that a lot of affiliates are giving them the same thing and that they're promoting, and it's all, this is great, that's great. What they really want is something knowledgeable and insightful and authoritative, and data can potentially enable you to provide that. So I think data and technology are different here. So from a compliance perspective and advertising, I think the technology obviously that we run and other people run monitors what's going on and is very, very useful to be able to spot the issues quite quickly, so that the operators who are currently in the UK responsible for this can focus in on those issues and work with the affiliate.
We completely agree with the goal with all these UK organizations are trying to achieve, like protecting the vulnerable groups. But this compliance mess they create is not helpful to either operators or affiliates.
I agree that the communication with operators is very important, but for us the most important things is to bring the best casino list with best informations for the players.
Slots are ruthless now. I think slots have gone too far, to be honest. People are being rinsed, right? Players are just being rinsed by these high volatility slots. So one player gets a win, 99 of them leave disappointed. You have to add some value to that. You have to distract is a horrible word, but you have to soften the blow of getting rinsed all the time. If presence is a word that's used a lot now, and if you're playing a game and you've got it on autoplay, and let's be honest, a lot of slots are dull, then if you've got something immediately there that takes away your attention from the fact that your balance is just going like this, that keeps you playing for longer, that rewards you maybe with spins, with whatever mechanic, but then gives you something after the loss. If you go home feeling, do you know what? I lost 50 quid, but I enjoyed that. That's what we should give to players, and we make enough money. We should put some investment into giving something back to them.
I always feel that for gamification, you should have a focus of what's trying to achieve, where you're at it. On the wheel of risk, it was around retention, so we could make sure players got rewarded, something they liked, so they would think of us, keep us top of mind, because
the regulators, of course, are aiming for good and are doing good, and they are forcing all the time the markets to change. And when this is happening, and it's happening all the time for the last years, of course, and we see all the time a shift for innovation and adaptation because the markets are changing.
you know, our goal is really to try and ensure that through gamification you can deliver a really enjoyable experience to a player. And yes, maybe the player during that process doesn't win money, but they could actually be doing good for the world at the same time.
Accessibility of cryptocurrencies, in the sense that if you compare crypto to traditional fiat currencies, in the case of the latter, and in most cases, when a person wants to buy something, all that person needs to do is simply choose what to buy and pay. However, this is not always necessarily the case for crypto-based solutions, where the user might be required to have a certain level of technological knowledge, for instance, as to how crypto is acquired in the first place, how wallets work, and how exchanges work.
Accessibility and widespread use, given the inherent problems with certain crypto projects, with crypto per se, you need to give legitimacy. So legitimacy, you need to regulate. So I would say that the indications are that in the forthcoming 2 to 3 years, we're going to have a more harmonized approach and more widespread use.
There are massive benefits if you choose the right blockchain. We can process transactions for 1,000th of a US dollar. We can process transactions instantaneously as fast as a server could at scale. But it did take quite a bit of time to stumble upon the right blockchain that could do that for us, and to get all the whole technology stack lined up.
Government guidance for businesses is, quote, to encourage the use of contactless payment where possible. And I think, you know, as a society, we have stepped into that. And when you start breaking habits, it becomes a habit. So people will carry cash around less. So when we think about reopening our casinos, and, you know, we pray that will be sooner rather than later, we have to respond to consumer trends and consumer behaviors.
The appropriate level of comfort when it comes to social distancing, hygiene, and all that jazz, and definitely cashless payments or digital types of payments, excuse me, have a role to play to make it easier for them to effectuate those transactions.
So the most common question is like, what is new in SEO? What's happening right now? What do you need to do now? And what will change over the next year? And I think a much more interesting question that isn't asked very often is what will not change in the next year, or what will not change in the next 10 years? And this is an approach that I believe very few have in SEO. We constantly look at what will change instead of looking at what will not change.
I think content is, it's such a cliche to say content is the king, but I'll repeat it over and over again, because if you have bad content, you can do anything to the site. Long term, you're not going to survive this game.
Try and focus on what's happening in the next month, purely because we don't know how Google is going to react. But then, like what Maria said, you know, I think as soon as there's a core algorithm update, everybody, I like to refer to them as ambulance chasers. They change everything about their website, and it's like, whoa, slow down. You've got no idea what changed. Just let the dust settle, and then look what's changing.
Building from the very beginning, be in the foundations of how you create the product, how you create your branding, what kind of products you have on site, how you build up your whole product as a whole.
I also think that it's important to get different schemes, because usually when we speak about payments, we speak about only Visa and MasterCard. But if you go out from Europe, it's not so important to have Visa and MasterCard. You need to have net banking and everything. So you need to have a specific solution, like how to acquire the money, how to settle them. This is important.
We've had GDPR now for several years, and there are still many PSPs who have a very uncooperative version of GDPR. You ask them a fraud question and they go, we can't tell you because that'll be non-compliant. And so it kind of goes in with service and support and these conflicts. And do you really think that if they haven't managed it with GDPR, it's going to be something that we're going to be able to see with all the other compliance regulations?
Some of them will become maybe pick up the right niche, like Olga was saying, and service the right areas. And then the last thing will be, I think I see some partnership and consolidations happening already, and I think that in the future could be a conglomerate of some PSPs servicing the operators. So I think this should be also as a package service for the operators.
If you look back at PSPs 5 years ago versus PSPs today, they've come a long way, and those compromises are ever diminishing and ever shrinking. So the natural course of things is in 5 years' time, PSPs will be less of a compromise. You won't have to pick between products or service or pricing. You'll be able to have all of them straight out of the box and as near to perfect as possible setup.
The popularity and appeal of poker in general across the industry, I think we were seeing that to a small extent even before lockdowns started to happen, a very slow increase in recent years.
I think that poker has a very special place in the ecosystem. First of all, because it's a social game in its nature, also live poker, obviously, and it's a game that people have a passion for.
Poker has always been the coolest and hardest game to be played in online gambling.
I think it's been really interesting to see. Obviously, you referred to Chris Moneymaker over a decade ago when we had the poker boom. It was really interesting. But it's been nice to see the resurgence, let's say, since the start of March. It's then carried over to April. I don't know about the other guys. We've seen it kind of tail off a little bit, let's say, in May. But most certainly, I think the impact of COVID has been quite beneficial for poker.
SBC are very famous for the quality and quantity of delegates. In the SBC summit, in several points, you had 800 and 1,000 people in a session, and this one here, Casinobeats, is on the same level and scale. So I'm really happy to have you all over here. And
there's a lot of demands for different demands for operator about regulation, about new offers, etc. And it's very overwhelming because recently with the UK changes, etc., we have a lot of new demands, new offers, new things. And I think we should expand the team that respond to these things and give the operators a much faster approach and much faster responsiveness to their needs.
Two camps at the moment. There are the ones who believe AI is the solution to everything, and there are people who believe that AI, is just not going to take over the world. But if you boil down what we have at the moment, our AI is very narrow. It's a narrow AI which takes a subset of data and then processes it, and it's subject to bias. So we need to iron out a lot of bias in the programming of AI that we have.
We use AI in multiple ways. On top of compliance, we use that, of course, to understand the customer better, to use the customer data, to provide better customer experience and so on. But when it does come to compliance, that is more used on the player safety.
Will start to become more of a reality across many industries and also in gaming. And why is this? Because on the one hand, it enables businesses and gaming operators to gain efficiency through the automation of certain routine processes, but at the same time it also increases the effectiveness and speed at which the decisions are made.